guys, today we are practicing again our strategy of using tidy numbers to solve addition problems. Before we start, just reminding you what a tidy number is. It's any number that ends in a zero, so like 10, 20, 50, 700, 60, whatever. And here are our steps to solving these problems using the tidy numbers strategy. We're going to first do a nice and easy one, and then we're going to move on to some harder problems. Okay, so if we had 7 plus 8. And if you need, you can always, just for now, draw your 7, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I've got my 7 and my 8 over here. So what I need to do is I want to be changing one number to a tidy number because that's going to make it much easier to solve. So my first step, step 1 over here, is to find the number that is closest to a tidy number. And if I compare, I've got 7, I've got 8, 7, the closest number, tidy number would be 10. 8, the closest tidy number would also be 10. So therefore, which one's closer? This is my number that's closest to my tidy number. Now my next step is I need to make this a tidy number by adding or subtracting from my other number. Okay, so that means I'm going to have to do something to this 8 to make it 10. So what do I have to do? I have to add. And how many do I have to add? 2. Now, what you do is you borrow 2 from the 7, drag it across, and that way you're still dealing with the same number, you're just making the problem a little bit easier to solve by moving some and giving it to another number. But you've still got in total 7 and 8. I've just moved 2 across. So if I do plus 2 over here, the rule is you always have to do the opposite on the other side. So we have 7 plus 8, and now we're going to change our problem. Now, our new number, 7 minus 2 is 5, and 8 plus 2 is 10. Now, 7 plus 8 is the same as 5 plus 10. All I've done is I've made it easier to solve because I've moved the 2 over here and I've put it by the 8. 5 plus 10 is 15. So that's much easier to solve. And if you did want to check to make sure that you know that this works, you can try doing 7 plus 8 and it will also equal 15. We've got 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, so that is how we do our tidy number strategy. Okay, we'll start off with a couple easy problems and then we'll do some harder ones. I'm going to do a couple first for you to practice just to make sure that you remember how to do this strategy. So I'm going to guide you through this and you're going to work through at the same time and just pause the video at certain times. Okay, so if I have 13 plus 8. And now we're dealing with slightly bigger numbers. You don't have to draw every single part of the 13. You could just represent it, so make it look like you've got 13 by doing a little pile. If you want to, you can do 13. So 13 plus 8. What's our first step? Pause the video and I want you to say out loud what the first step is for using the tidy number strategy. Okay, so our first step is we have to find the number that's closest to our tidy number. So we've got 13 and we have 8. What tidy number that ends in 0, is closest to 13? It's 10. What number, tidy number, is closest to 8? It's also 10. Now which one is closer? I want you to say what one is closer. Is it 13 or 8? Which one's closer to our 10? It is 10. Because 10, we just have to add 2. Compared to 13, we'd have to take away 3. So taking away 3 is not as close as 2. So our next step is we need to make our 8 a tidy number by adding or subtracting, and that means we're borrowing from our other side. So are we going to add or are we going to subtract? We're going to add, and I want you to draw on a piece of paper or on your own whiteboard app or on a Google Doc. How much do we have to add? We have to add 2. If we're adding 2 on this side, what are we doing on this side? We're imagining that we're borrowing 2 and adding it on this side. So if we're adding on one side, we must always take away on the other side. We still have to end up with 13 plus 8, but we're just making it easier to solve by taking 2 from over here and putting it by our 8. Okay, so it's really important that we remember that. So 13 take away 2 gives us 11. 8 plus 2 gives us 10. What is 10 plus 11? If you don't know off by heart, you can add the 10s and 1s. So first I'm going to add my 10s. So that's 10 plus 10. And that equals 20. And then I'm going to add my 1 from my 11. That equals 21. Alrighty, now we're going to do another problem, a little bit harder, and I'm still going to pause the video, ask you to pause the video at certain times so that you can answer the questions for me and see if you're correct. Okay, a slightly harder problem now. We've got 34 and we've got 9. What's our first step that we have to do? Again, we can imagine we've got 34 and a little pile of 9. Now, what's our first step? Pause the video and tell me what the first step is. Okay, so the first step is that we have to figure out which number is closest to a tidy number. If you need to write it down, you can, just like what I'm doing, or if you already know from looking at it, then that's fantastic. So, 34 and 9. The closest tidy number for 34 would be 30. The closest tidy number for 9 would be 10. So which one's closer? 34 to 30 or 9 to 10? It's 9 to 10, so that's my first step. We find our number that's closest to a tidy number. Now tell me, pause the video and tell me what is the second step. What do we do once we've figured out what number is closest to our tidy number? So we have to make this 9 a tidy number by borrowing from our second number. So we have to ask ourselves, how many do we have to add or subtract to make a tidy number? Okay, and I'm going to put that here. You have step 3. I'm going to add this as step 3. Sorry, it's not the same, but these are important steps that you might forget sometimes. So, if we have to figure out how much we have to add to the other side, what does that look like? How many do we have to add to our, going back to our problem, how much do we have to add to our 9 to make it a tidy number? We have to add 1. If we're adding 1, what we're doing is taking away 1 from this side and giving it over here. So we have to do the opposite on the other side, okay? So that's what I'm saying over here. First step is you ask yourself, how many do I have to add or subtract to make a tidy number? And then you have to do the opposite to the other side. So our new problem is 34 take away 1, which is 33, and then 9 plus 1, which is 10. What is 33 plus 10? That's super easy because we just have to add our 10s. So our 30 and our 10, 3 plus 1, or 30 plus 10 gives us 40. And then we have to add our 1s, which is 3. That gives us 43. 34 plus 58. Okay, now pause the video and tell me what the first step is for adding with tidy numbers. Okay, so hopefully you said that our first step is that we have to identify which number is closest to our tidy number out of 34 and 58. Now, tell me which number is closest to a tidy number and why. Pause the video, figure it out if you haven't already, and then I want you to say what the answer is, and then I'm going to tell you what it is as well. Okay, so 34, the closest tidy number to 34 would be 30, and the closest tidy number to 58 would be 60. So, therefore, our 58 is closest to our tidy number because we're only adding 2 compared to having to subtract 4. 4 is a bigger number than 2, so that's why we're closer to 58. So, I've identified what number is closest to a tidy number. Tell me again what's the next step. Pause the video and tell me what the next step is. Okay, so our next step is we need to make this 58 a tidy number by borrowing from our second number. So to do that, here is step 3. We ask ourselves, how many do I have to add or subtract to make a tidy number? So we look at 58, and I want you to do that for me. I want you to change both numbers to our new problem by making one number a tidy number. Pause the video and do that for me. Okay, so what you have to do is you have to add 2 to this side. If you're adding 2 to this side, what are you doing to this side? You are doing the opposite. So you are taking away 2, because what you're doing is you're taking 2 and you're giving it to this side to give us our tidy number. So our now tidy number is going to be 60. And 34 take away 2 is 32. Now, 32 plus 60, that's much easier to solve. What we have to do is first add our tens. So what's 30 plus 60? If you know what 3 plus 6 is, 3 plus 6 is 9, so 30 plus 60 is 90. Then we have to add our ones. And we've only got one 1 since we've got our tidy number here. So now we just need to add 2. And that gives us our total of 92. Okay. So now what we're going to do is I want you to work your way through the problems that you can see on the left-hand side. Okay? I want you to stop at any time. If you think some of these are too hard, that's totally fine. If you think it's too hard, you can wait and I can guide you through the harder problems. Or once you've done questions maybe 1 through till 3 or 4, you can go and do the follow-up. Alright? So, have a go at all these questions. I thought I had one more, but I'm done. 8. Okay? So, here are your problems. I want you to work your way through all of them, so pause the video, remind yourself of what the steps are, and have a go. I've made some of them quite tricky, so some of these ones are going to be over 100, so you're going to have to think of your place value and carrying across, and see how you go, okay? And pause the video, have a go, and I'm going to talk you through every answer. Okay, so the first one is 7 plus 28. First step, we have to figure out what number is closest to a tidy number. 7 plus 28, that would be 28. We have to add 2. If we add 2 to one side, we have to subtract 2 on the other side. So that gives us our new problem of 7 take away 2, 5, plus 28 plus 2, 30. Now, 5 plus 30, that one's nice and easy. That equals 35. Hopefully you got that one right, and I will record the answers as well. 35. Okay, our next problem is 13 plus 9. And you might already know in your head a strategy to figure out plus 9. So this is going to be really nice and easy for you. We identify it's 9 as our closest number to our tidy number. Then we add 1. If we add 1 on one side, we take away 1 on the other side. So that gives us a new problem of 12 plus 10. So first up, we add our tens. So 10 plus 10. That that equals 20. And then we have to add our 2, which gives us 22. Remember, you can draw the piles underneath if you want. You could either draw piles or draw every single dot if you need. That's totally fine, but I'm just going to quickly rush through them, so I'm not going to do that, but you're welcome to if you want. Okay, so next question is 28 plus 35. Alrighty, which number is closest to a tidy number? It's 28. Okay, how much do we have to add to make 28 a tidy number? We have to add 2. So if we're adding 2 on this side, that means we have to take away on this side, because remember, we're borrowing and giving it over here. So 28 plus 2 gives us 30. And 35, take away 2, gives us 33. Now I add my 10s and my 1s. 30 plus 30, 30 plus 30 gives us 60. Then I have to add my 1s, which is just 3 because I've got a 0 here, plus 3 equals 63. Next up, first up, what number is closest to a tidy number? It is 38. How many do we have to add or subtract to make 38 a tidy number? It is 2. If we add 2 to this side, we have to take away to our other side. Okay, 38 plus 2 is 40. Now, 54, take away 2 is 53. Now, what we need to do is add our 10s and our 1s. We need to add our 50 and our 40. I'm going to put it down here this time. 50 plus 40 is 90. And we know that because if we know what 5 plus 4 is, we know what 50 plus 40 is. Then we need to add our 1s. So plus 3. This gives us 93. Okay, 67 plus 55. So we've got 67 plus 55. And now this is where it's going to start to get a little bit harder because you might be able to tell that our total number is going to be over 100. So we're going to have to carry in our place values. Okay, because we need to remember that you can only have 9 lots of something in a place value before if you have 10, you have to move across to the next place value. Alrighty, 67 and 55. First up, our first number that's closest to a tidy number is 67. To make it a tidy number, we have to add 3. If we're adding 3 to this side, we have to take away 3 to this side. 67 plus 3 gives us 70. And 55, take away 3, gives us 52. Now, 70 plus 50. The way you can think about it is, do you know what 7 plus 5 is? 7 plus 5 is 12. So, if 7 plus 5 is 12, then that means 70 plus 50 is 120. So it's kind of the same, you're just adding a 0 on. So you can kind of imagine, you can kind of, for a moment, block out the zeros and then just add it in at the end. Okay, 7 plus 5 is 12, so 70 plus 50 is 120. And if you find this hard, please let me know and maybe we can work on understanding how that works. Okay, and then we just have to add our 1s, so we have to now plus 2. That gives us a total of 122. Okay, 125, so bigger numbers again. You can do it though. Plus 87. So we're still working with tidy numbers, okay? We're still looking at how to make this problem easier to solve. So, what number is closest to a tidy number? 87. how much do we have to add? We have to add 3. If we're adding 3 to the side, what are we doing to this side? We're taking away 3. Now, 125 take away 3 is 122. 87 plus 3 gives us our tidy number of 90. So, now what we have to do is we have to go through and add our hundreds, tens and ones. First up, we've got 100. So we've got 100. Then we have to add our tens. 20 plus 90. Then we have to add our ones. There's a B. Which is 2. Okay, so first we're going to add our tens. What is 20 plus 90? If you know what 2 plus 9 is, then you also can figure out what 20 plus 90 is. So, 20, 90. What is 2 plus 9 to start with? 2 plus 9 is 11. So that means 20 plus 90 would give us 110. Now, so that means we've now got 100 plus 110. What's 100 plus 110? That would give us 220. Sorry, 110. That would give us 200. Okay, sorry. Now, 100 plus 100 would give us 200, and then 200 plus 10 would give us 210. Okay, so now we've added our 100, our 20, and our 90. Now we need to add our 2. So that gives us a total of 210. Now this might have been a little bit hard for you because you had to take a lot of different steps to add all your tens, ones, and now our hundreds. And sometimes you then have to add it again. So I would suggest adding your tens first because you're probably going to get a number that ends up in our hundreds that we can combine with our 100 over here. Okay, and if this sounds too confusing for you, you are welcome to stop and you can do the follow-up activities. Okay, you will be doing the hard activity and I will call the next one a super challenge. Okay, so do the hard one if this question here is too much for you. Okay, so that gives us 212. Okay, our last problem. And I really want to know, in a Google form please, how you found these problems. I don't expect everyone to be able to do these last questions. These are for like group 1. I think you could do this and everyone else can have a go, but if you find it too hard, please don't worry because I don't expect you to understand these questions because they're quite tricky, or you could practice with your parents at home. Okay? So what we have to do is we make sure we add our place value, add our numbers together, our tens, hundreds, ones, add them all separately. Okay, so our last problem is 238 plus 75. And we are still looking at a number that will end in 0. So we've got 38 and we've got 75. What number is closest to a tidy number? It would be this 38 here. So this is why I've made it quite tricky for you. Okay, how much do we have to add? 2. And how much do I have to add to this side? How much? If I add 2 on this side, I have to take away 2 on this side. Okay, so now you're going to have 240. And we're going to have plus 73. And this is easier to do than changing this number because if we have to add or subtract 5, then we add or subtract 5 to this side and we totally change the number. So what you need to know about tidy numbers is it's best to just change it so that your tens and ones, you have a, as long as you've got a 0 in the ones column. Okay, so it has to end in 0. So 240 plus, whoops, 73. So I'm going to have to write out all of my place value. So it's best that you write it all out. 200 plus 40 plus 70 plus 3. Okay, and one by one, I'm going to add all these numbers together. I'm going to add first my tens, because I can see that this is going to mean that this number will end up as a hundreds number. 40 plus 70. Okay, so what is 40 plus 70? 4 plus 7 would give us 11. So 40 plus 70 gives us 110. Okay, so now we've got 110, and we can cross this out because we know we've done this, and we need to add that to our 200. So we've got 200 plus 110. Now, to do that, we need to add our tens. So 200 plus 300, sorry, 200 plus 100 gives us 300. And then we add our tens, we've only got one lot of 10. And then we add our ones, we've got both zeros, so we add a 0 here. Now we've got 310, and now our last step, so I'll cross this all out, is to add our 3. So plus, whoops, 3. That gives us 313. Okay, so our last number, our last answer is 313. Okay, so I don't expect you all to have got through this entire, all these questions, because questions 5, I've managed to remove a number. I didn't even notice that. The last 3 questions are a lot harder than what I expect you to be able to do. Especially if you're a year 5, these last problems over here are year 6 problems, so no worries if you got those ones, found those ones hard. So what I want you to do is, for the follow-up activities, I will create links. So if you can do problems like this, I'm going to call it challenge. If you can do problems like this, I'm going to call it super challenge in my link for my follow-up. And if you can do this, this is called extension. Okay, so choose the follow-up that suits you and have a go at the follow-up questions. And we can have another lesson probably tomorrow on Thursday. Okay, well done.